Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got a great friend of the show, David Sirota, on. He's going to talk about how hard the Democratic establishment has been working to make sure they quash every last progressive insurgent challenger Senate candidate in particular.
Amazing.
We also have Johnny Burtka on, another friend of the show, to talk about where the Trump campaign, all the many ways in which the Trump campaign has gone astray. But we wanted to start with a little bit of a focus on Joe Biden and some new fundraising numbers.
Yeah, these fundraising numbers are really stunning. Let's throw that up there on the screen from CNBC. Joe Biden and his joint committees have raised nearly $100 million in the second quarter as big money donors have decided to get off the sidelines. And some of these people are exactly who you would expect. Let's put the next one up there on the screen. One of them is the Merck CEO. So Merck, if you weren't aware, is Ken Fraser, CEO of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, so not necessarily there a surprise. And it was also once on a Trump advisory board. Big Biden bundlers. Also reading in the news that Rupert Murdoch's son, James Murdoch, and his wife have given about $1.6 million, as much as they can, to Biden super PACs and more. All the usual characters are involved here, right? David Brock apparently transferred like over $1 million in dark money to a now super PAC. So we have no idea where this money is even coming from. I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars flown right into. It's a great time to be in the Biden campaign.
Yeah,
You're up by 10 points. You got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank.
They're closing the gap on that cash on hand number.
They really are.
And they're doing it fast. And, you know, it's really interesting to read the business press a lot of times because they can be very revealing. So this CNBC report is fantastic. They got some phenomenal quotes here about why Wall Street and big business is getting off the sidelines, changing horses here in some instances from Trump to Biden, or just coming off the sidelines altogether. One of the people that they quoted anonymously here says, the big money donors are capitalists. For a minute, Bernie was close to locking it up, but then came South Carolina. They were petrified of Trump and horrified by Bernie. Now they actually have a choice. Before they didn't. Kind of says it all about the, nothing will fundamentally change approach of Joe Biden. The people who are really in the know, who have his ear, who have the campaign's ear, know that he's not a radical leftist, Marxist, et cetera, that he's going to be the Joe Biden that he has always been. And the other piece here is really simple. Look, these people are in a lot of ways, they're sort of mercenaries. Yeah. They bet on the team that's winning. Joe Biden's winning right now, and they want to back him now so that they're able to get their phone calls answered if he's in the White House.
I mean, look, this is Hollywood Silicon Valley elite. I mean, look at this list. James Murdoch, like I said, Jeff Lawson, CEO of a cloud platform called Twilio, Bob Iger, the head of Disney Corporation, $250,000, Steven Spielberg, Dustin Moskovitz, who's the co-founder of Facebook, the Merck CEO, who I just talked about, California-based real estate developers who have a lot of interest in getting that SALT tax repealed, the state and local tax, right? So what did I just go down on? We're talking about Silicon Valley billionaires, and we're talking about people in the entertainment industry, and then also we've got these Wall Streeters who are in there who have understood from the very beginning, quote, nothing will fundamentally change. That is how you get one of the most well-funded campaigns of all time. And that's really what is lurking beneath the surface here, is really the elites of Wall Street, Hollywood, and others coming together and giving Joe all the money he could possibly want. And the best part is they didn't even back him during the primary. They loved Pete Buttigieg or Kamala.
They mostly loved Pete,
or any of these other people. Yeah, they gave Pete oceans of money. They did not believe in this man, but they're like, yeah, all right, here you go.
Well,
here's a couple $100 million.
Here's another revealing quote from the article. And by the way, obviously Trump has tons of money too, and tons of big business backers. They usually have a little bit of a different flavor from the Democratic backers. That's why the Wall Street ones are interesting, because they will play both sides, absolutely. And so the other quote here was, you knew Trump was crazy, but now you believe he is crazy, and now he's going to hurt you more than he can help you. So in other words, sure, he gave us our tax cuts, was great, pumped up the stock market, we've made a bunch of money, but now he's, actually kind of needs to govern and deal with this stuff if it's not going to create a massive backlash against our own personal financial interests, which is what these folks are always looking out for, number one, first and foremost.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I mean, you just look at it and you really begin to understand like how the strings are being pulled here. And look, yeah, you're right. Trump takes money from all kinds of these people. Many of the same ones, real estate, a lot of real estate developers, obviously.
Oil and gas industry, clearly.
even then, I mean, Biden has taken money from many of these oil and gas people before. I think he took some fracking. I was just reading a headline earlier about how he was taking a lot of money from fracking executives. So you can just see.
And by the way, one of the hard lines they drew in the Unity Task Force was we're not going to ban fracking. So I'm sure those things are totally unconnected.
Well, it's just kind of incredible. Again, you look and you see how much money is floating behind Biden, and it's just he's not doing anything. I mean, he hasn't made any real commitments. He's not really campaigning. Up by 15 points in the last Quinnipiac poll, 11 points, NBC, Wall Street Journal. The elite, I mean, they're doing backflips here. Like, they just know that their man is going to be in the White House. And some of the things that I've heard is that the people who are the most excited about a potential Biden wins is Silicon Valley, because of how close Google and Facebook and them were with the Obama White House. And they have all of the contacts, the Obama people that are on the same campaign. Many of them even went to go work for these Silicon Valley companies
at Uber,
after
Amazon,
the Obama administration. Exactly. Jake Sullivan, one of his foreign policy advisors, Uber consultant.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I can't help but think about what could have been scenario when I see pieces like this, and especially when they're talking about Bernie. Like, here we are. Why did Joe Biden win? Because the media and the Democratic establishment anointed him as the electable one. And because the Democratic Party has become sort of so controlled, so obsessed with Trump, so terrified of Trump, like the fact that that was the issue that trumped all other issues, no pun intended there, was electability. Well, now here's Joe Biden sitting on like a 10 to 15 point lead, right? Bernie Sanders would easily have been, probably the same amount up. And yet the financial backers of Bernie, the approach of Bernie, and the coalition that would have formed behind Bernie would have, I think, looked a lot different. So we could be sitting here at this moment with these same people, rather than being like, yay, Joe, this is going to be amazing, being like, oh my God, we have nowhere to turn. Good. That's the state of affairs that I want. And rather than, because, we follow the polling and the crosstabs really closely, rather than having this massive white suburban and senior movement towards Biden, we would have had a different looking coalition where, Latinos right now, Trump's doing pretty well with working class Latinos, right? I mean, this is part of the thing that it's not enough to make up the ground that he has destroyed, which is like ridiculous. But look at this from Dave Wasserman. Like, Trump is at 35% with Hispanics, just 31% with college whites in this Quinnipiac poll. Note there are small samples, but that's consistent with some other things that we're seeing in terms of this new Democratic coalition that is very much, as we expected during the Democratic primary, centered on white suburbanites. That's whose interests will be catered to. It's centered around essentially like these people who are getting quoted by CNBC and never Trump Republicans. That's what the party's going to be about during a time with the pandemic and an economic depression and all the turmoil and tumult that is happening right now, at a time when you could actually have a massive transformational vision actually implemented, and where you could have, if Bernie Sanders won the landslide victory that Joe Biden now looks like he's going to have, you could have had a rethinking of what electability looks like and what type of values you need to hold and policies you can promote and still get elected. But alas, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he won. And we recognize that exactly what happened, which is that means the party will be the party of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Joe Biden, and Pete Buttigieg. Biden has said himself, I want to be a bridge to the Pete Buttigiegs of the world. That's what he wants his administration. That means a lot for what the coalition is going to look like. And it's going to be 70% college-educated whites, a.k.a. suburbs. And then longer, look, with Trump, people hate Trump, but soon Trump might be gone. Now, what are the numbers for a next GOP candidate who recognizes some of the things that Trump has ran on? What are his numbers going to be amongst the Hispanic population? What are his numbers going to be amongst the black population?
Yeah.
You only need to win about 15 to 20% of the black vote. As a Republican, you could dramatically change the entire electoral map around the country. Now, Republicans have recognized this for a long time, and they have instead run on tax cuts and many other things, which have no, connection whatsoever to working class people's lives. But the sooner somebody figures that out, the sooner that you can capitalize on the greatest electoral benefit or strategy in history. But nobody has. But interestingly enough, this caught both of our eyes yesterday. Ted Cruz, who is, look, he's an opportunist. You all saw him in 2016 and all that. They're all politicians. he has either been watching Rising or he's been somebody's been in his ear. Now, he gets the latter part wrong, but he says the future of conservatism is populist and libertarian. But what really caught my eye is my friend Emily Jashinsky also interviewed him. Listen to the way he talks. He recognizes that something has clearly happened after 2016. He wants to try and co-opt it into his more libertarian conservative framework.
Right.
But he understands if you want to win as a Republican in the future, this is the way it's going to be done. Let's take a listen to what he said.
There's also the big lie in politics is that Republicans are the party of the rich and Democrats are the party of the poor.
Yep.
That just ain't true. Today's
Certainly
Democratic
not now.
Party is the party of Silicon Valley billionaires. Today's Democratic Party is the party of Michael Bloomberg. It is the party of power. It is the party of suppression. It is jackbooted thugs who will enforce their will through force. That's who the Democratic Party represents. Today's Republican Party are Ohio steelworkers. Right. Today's Republican Party are single moms waiting tables who are filled with opportunities. They're people like my dad when he was a teenage immigrant from Cuba washing dishes. And it's entirely inverted. So all the time I encounter Bernie Sanders supporters, like typically, kids, like high school kids, college kids. And I'll tell them, listen, I agree with Bernie. Yeah. Bernie says Washington's corrupt. He says both parties are in on it. That's all true.
But then he goes on to say, so that's why we got to get government out of your life, right?
What he gets wrong, again, is this idea that the future is libertarian and all that. And really what he should, maybe this is what he meant, although I don't want to give him too much of the benefit of the doubt, is that Americans are skeptical of concentrated power, not just in government, and they recognize, I think at this moment, that right now, that the most concentrated power, this is how his explainers were telling me. Right?
Okay, got it.
And I was like, they were like, well, there's this folk libertarian tradition, which is, of course, true, like a Jeffersonian kind of thing that runs through America, be like, any kind of sort of concentrated capital power and all of that, I think that's bad. If that's what he meant, then sure, maybe. That's why we need more robust antitrust and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily what he meant there. Regardless, I wanted to flag it for everybody here. Look, I don't think Ted Cruz is a reform person or any of that. But if you're starting to talk that way, you recognize that Biden has now basically made it so that this is the only way a Republican Party can ever win again.
It's true.
That does not mean that they will wake up tomorrow and stop passing corporate tax cuts or any of these other things. But the rhetoric is the first key step because that's, and look, they're going to realize real quick in 2020 when they lose big. They're going to be like, what happened here?
But you know what's going to happen. They're going to go, what happened? We got away from our traditions of conservatism. Right. I mean, we see it already. They're like on to the debt and the deficit. That's the playbook they're going to run in a Joe Biden administration. They're already doing in the campaign. It's like radical leftist and tax and spend liberal. I mean, they're going down that same path that they always go down. And also, yes, obviously, as I have been talking about this morning, the Democrats are aligned around this wealthy class and then this affluent white suburban class. That is what has happened. But Republicans are also, both of these parties are the party of the rich. Yes. That's the problem, right? And so you have still very much the black and brown working class over on one side and the white working class over on another side. And I don't see any indication. I do think Democrats should be deeply troubled by the numbers among Latinos. And I think that there has been a sense of assuming that they're just going to come over into the Democratic camp over time. You don't really have to do anything. You don't have to really speak to their economic interests. You don't really have to. I mean, the Biden team's really done anything to reach out to Latino voters on their own. I think Democrats should be deeply troubled by that. Ted Cruz is always also completely disingenuous.
I don't think
mostly wrong in his analysis.
I do not think Ted Cruz will be the next Republican president of the United States. I think he'll probably run for it or try it again. Here's what I think is going to happen. There's going to be another GOP autopsy. That's what happened in 2012. When they were like, what we really need to do is pass more tax cuts, and that's how we win people of color over. And then Trump came along, basically smacked them all in the face and was like, no, absolutely not. I think the exact same thing is going to happen this time. If Trump loses, they're going to be like, well, we strayed from our principles. They're going to run on that all 3 years under Joe Biden as president. And then somebody else is going to come along, slap them all in the face right again. Except this time, there'll be so few of them left in Congress that maybe they will be dead once and for all. But one can only dream and hope, and that's mine.
It will be interesting to watch unfold. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radar, so that's next.